Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Freedman, and my co-host, as usual, for these things is Michael Burd, and he's on a Zoom call. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Alan. This is another one of our interviews with people involved in Israel advocacy and either here or overseas.
Yeah, now our guest today is a friend from Israel, Daniel Luria from Ateret Cohanim, who will be known to our listeners of Nothing Left when we spoke to him a few years ago. So, Michael, you can kick it off.
Yeah, just to start, Daniel, please tell us briefly what Ateret Cohanim is all about.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Shalom to both of you and anyone listening. Ateret Cohanim, the name actually is a little bit deceiving because it means the crown of priests, although we have nothing to do with the priesthood or the Temple Mounts, etc. It's an organization. In some ways, it's really like the JNF of Jerusalem. We're involved. It's a non-profit organization for 45 years, been involved in redeeming Jerusalem, reclaiming old Jewish properties, effectively keeping Jerusalem in Jewish hands. Everything about whether Jerusalem should be divided or not divided centers around what we do in our office and what we do out in the field, adding Jewish life to certain parts of Jerusalem, what we call the heart of Jerusalem, that the Arab world maybe wants. So our work is paramount given the pressures and the desire of the world, the Arab world specifically, to sort of take away Jerusalem or to divide Jerusalem.
Okay, so let's get on to Tachlis. With the war with Hamas going on at the moment, what's the mood of Israelis like regarding the war? What sort of sense are you getting?
I think no war is good. But there's one thing about this war, which, by the way, is called the El Aqsa flood. So if the Arab world, everything is about Jerusalem. The missiles that landed, tens of thousands of them have got Al-Quds, Jerusalem, written on them. This is all about the Temple Mount, Jerusalem, a religious war. But what I'm seeing in Israel today is something I haven't seen in 29 years, and that is a certain amount of we're together. If you like, even we're together in the ark. The way to survive in a flood is actually to be together in the ark. And in some ways, aside from there are extreme left that may be demonstrating and talking about Netanyahu and going and like it was maybe before, but the bulk of the nation, the people on the ground, communities, cities, it's all about what can I do to help? How can I volunteer? What's on now? There's a common enemy. A lot of people woke up. The right wing maybe already woke up at the beginning of Oslo, but a lot of people have woken up. There is an enemy we have on our doorsteps amongst us. It's a problem that we're dealing with, but we're dealing with it together as a single people, as a nation, and that's something really very special. The building trade, the agricultural trade, everything.
So it's been going on for a few months now. Are the people determined to finish the job? Is that the sense that you're getting, or are there cracks starting to appear?
There's no cracks in the people. There's no cracks in the army, which is really just an arm that has to do what it has to do. The only place we're seeing cracks is maybe at the political level, and whether it's justified or not. What does it mean to have international pressure? What does it mean when America thinks that we're a star on their flag and they start dictating terms for us? I'm not a politician, and therefore I don't know what that feeling is like. Whether, from my point of view, there's a job to be done. There is an enemy, as different people have said. I think it was Douglas Murray. I don't know who said it first, Douglas Murray, or if it was Benny Gantz. You can't put out half a fire. There is a fire, there is a flame, there is a dangerous enemy on our back doorstep. We're surrounded north, south, deep south, and even a little bit amongst us. And that fire has to be put out. You have to show strength and strength of conviction. It has to go to the end. You can't let Hamas and what, we're going to go back into Gaza in 3 years' time. No, it's finished. I think Netanyahu knows that. And if he just recalls a little bit more of his roots and wants to be more like a Begin or a Shamir, he'll go to the end.
So what do you see as ultimately being the final plan for Gaza? What would you like to see?
Well, that's a beauty. There are two people that know the future. I was told by my father, Zichrono Livracha, there are prophets and fools.
Yeah.
I'm neither. Listen, we have, first of all, have a job to do. And when we see what things are like after the job, I mean, people weren't discussing what to do with Germany when the war was over. They defeated the Nazi enemy. And then at some point, there was different plans put in, as we know, and we know what happened to Germany and the rest of Europe, etc. I don't know exactly what will be. There are obviously issues, serious issues that need to be dealt with. One thing is for certain, creating a Palestinian state like the delusional State Department thinks, and maybe other countries that are caught in some Oslo time warp, that obviously can't be. The country of Israel, the nation of Israel, is not prepared under any circumstances to have any Arab entity that is going to destroy the Jewish state on our back doorsteps. That's just not going to happen. So whether it be local communities that are going to run themselves, whether it be some of the, setting up cantons and they'll have some type of civil administration, obviously Israel has to have full control. There has to be some type of settlement in certain areas, of course, buffer zones, but you can't be a fool and ignore the fact that there's 1.8 or 2 million Arabs that need somewhere. But they've been used as a political pawn since 1948.
Sure.
And that's what has to come to an end. That's how it's going. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, whether it be the Arab Emirates, there's no shortage of Arab money to do something. I mean, we looked after our refugees in 1948. They're just lagging behind, 78 years. So, it's time that happened, but there's obviously no way that Israel should give away part of its homeland to just to create another Arab state just because the State Department or left-wing lunatics thought that was the right thing to do. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Michael?
Daniel, I want to ask you a couple of controversial questions, more pertaining to you or your organization. Your detractors claim that the right-wing settlers in Judea, Samaria are a bigger problem than Hamasis. I mean, it's ludicrous, but that's what they try and make you believe. There's also another issue I've heard in Australia. A very high-profile progressive Jew thinks that the fact that you're selling land only to Jews is racist. I just want you to address those 2 points and want to know your reaction and how you deal with those sort of accusations.
I'll deal with the second question first. It really doesn't bother me what the odd, ignorant progressive left say about Ateret Cohanim. They actually have no idea what we do. In fact, if they really understood what takes place, then they should be shouting and screaming from the rafters, but about one thing and one thing only, that an Arab is forbidden to sell to a Jew. That if an Arab sells to a Jew, he's killed. We don't sell property, by the way. Ateret Cohanim facilitates the acquisition of properties because we believe that Jews have a right to live anywhere and anywhere. Just like an Arab can buy in any neighborhood in Jerusalem, why should a Jew be forbidden to buy in any neighborhood in Jerusalem? Unless a person thinks, like the Nazis, there should be areas that are Yud and Rein. If you don't believe in Yud and Rein, then Jews have a right to buy anywhere. So Ateret Cohanim just facilitates buying for Jews in the heart of Jerusalem. That's not the problem. The problem, once again, is these illegal, immoral fatwas, which were the edicts that if an Arab sells to a Jew, he's killed. Could you imagine in Australia if there was a law that someone wrote not to be sold to Hispanics, or anyone sold this house to an English person or an Australian, you'd be killed. You wouldn't last a day. It's a disgrace. But that's the fatwa that exists. Even a middleman who helps in some of these acquisitions, he's allowed to be tortured, thrown into jail, lose his Muslim status, and can't be buried in a Muslim cemetery. I mean, that's just something totally unacceptable. So someone who truly understands how this real estate works, and no one's going door knocking to the Arabs, by the way. Arabs approach us and want to sell. It has to be done very carefully, of course, because of all the laws on him in the Muslim world that makes it difficult to sell to a Jew. So that's where the problem is. What we're doing is not only is it kosher, it's mahadrin kosher. It's even that. In relation to the first question about settlers, first of all, we're residents of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a different story from Judea and Samaria that I think is called the West Bank, something like that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's the Judean Samaria is the area where the settlers live. Settlers, by the way, is a beautiful word. It's been turned into something nasty and ugly. Are there individual residents or settlers of Judea and Samaria that sometimes throw stones back or react? The answer is yes. I'm not saying that I would do it. I'm not saying it's the best thing in the world. I definitely understand when, when Arabs are building illegally through the whole of Area C, and one Jew puts his tent or builds a synagogue on a hilly outcrop that's not owned by anyone and his is pulled down, there's a certain amount of anger and frustration. There's huge anger and frustration when stones are thrown at cars, where people are killed, where people are shot at on the roads in Judea and Samaria, and not enough is done. Today, a lot is being done. Kol hakavod tetzahal. But for many years, not a lot has been done. And have some residents and settlers of Judea and Samaria taken the rule into their own hands? Maybe yes, not appropriate, not right. But if they're reacting to someone else throwing stones, there's no policeman, and then they're doing something else, I can understand it. But it's such a small problem. It's taking, what it's doing? It's taking the fire or the light away from the real issue. You don't make an issue because they want to justify what Hamas is doing. It's an absolute disgrace to make any comparison whatsoever. We're talking about a few individuals that sometimes throw stones, may sometimes react to violence against them and other Jews. That's nothing compared to the Nazi, ISIS, Amalek, Hamas, cruel depravity and violence of terror that we saw and we have seen and known about for many, many years.
Yeah. Michael, anything else you want to pick up on there?
Yes, just one more question. I noticed that a lot of these protesters, obviously there was on the verge of a civil war before the 7th of October, or looked like it. A lot of these protesters have gone back to the streets, which I think is totally inappropriate while a war is going on. Surely they can wait till this war is over. And obviously the Netanyahu government will have to, face his accusers. But why are all these protesters going now back in the streets? And is it a significant amount? And is it a big issue or not?
I personally don't think it was a huge issue beforehand. It was large. There were big demonstrations, but it was nowhere near that the country was divided. There were issues. There were serious issues. There were issues against the religious, against the Haredim, against Netanyahu. Most of it is all just not Netanyahu. It's been like that even before the last elections. We have a situation where a very powerful left minority, and I stress minority, that has been funded heavily by left-wing extremists, including Prime Minister Barak, ex-Prime Minister Barak, and Netanyahu and Olmert. Everyone doing whatever they can to fund, to stoke the fire against Netanyahu, who refused to accept the democratically elected government. And between the press, money, some hot-headed left-wingers, and rallying the troops, it's still a small number when you look at the whole country. But they made a lot of noise and they got a lot of power and they put a lot of pressure. And that it got worse because it extended to even things of a religious nature in Tel Aviv, if you remember, towards the end. It was not good. It was definitely not good. But if you really go deep down and understand what they were doing, who was behind it, and why they were behind it, it's a disgrace. It really is. It's so undemocratic. Really, at some point, just because they don't like the outcome of the elections, the majority of the people, it's a shame. The fact that it's taking place now in the middle of a war, unbelievable. A disgrace that should not be accepted. It doesn't represent anything close to any type of majority. After the war, when it's finished, there'll be the assessments, there'll be the checks. People are resigning. There are people in the army. It's mainly the army and the intelligence community. I don't know how many of the politicians are going to resign because of the war. I mean, how far back are you going to go? I mean, this whole thing, who are you going to blame? There's going to be investigations, but unless you start with Oslo, it starts with Oslo. It doesn't start with Netanyahu. Is Netanyahu responsible for keeping a concept going? Yes, he's not the most right-wing, leader that we've had. He's tried to maybe wave, to captain the ship between the different ways, but he hasn't necessarily been the hero of the right wing of Judea and Samaria. But he's not the only one responsible for Oslo. There were people that gave them weapons. He came into an Oslo that was already signed and sealed. You know, the fact that people like Yossi Beilin are raising their head today is a disgrace. People like him should go into hiding. The left wing who is saying, no, just give them weapons. They'll look after themselves. Everything's okay. Let's have peace. We handed away the whole of Gaza, for heaven's sake. You know, destroyed the lives of 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And look what we got in return.
Alan?
The generals really seem to be responsible for a lot of the. So what are Israelis saying about the generals? Do they view them as being the real culprits in the intelligence failure?
Like everything, it depends who you ask. You've obviously got, you know, people on the left will say, no, it's the politicians. They're the ones that make the decisions. It's true. There are some things the politicians are responsible for. There's no question that Netanyahu was also part of the idea of if you give them jobs and money, everything will be okay. But at the same time, he also went into Gaza on a few occasions and tried to, you know, stem the tide or attack or do whatever was necessary. Did he go far enough beforehand? No. But imagine if he would have gone far beforehand.
Yeah.
He would have been crucified beyond, it would have made these demonstrations nothing if he would have gone. There was a family that was massacred, butchered, a baby in a cot from Itamar. There was another family in 2015 or something, whatever it was. 2011, another family was literally brutally killed, but they were living in Elon Moreh. The same type of barbaric, disgraceful behavior of these animals were massacred, but nothing happened. Do you know why? It's only one family. It's the settlers. It's Elon Moreh. It's Itamar. Oh, it's different. When did we wake up? I'm not saying it had to happen, but the reality is that we woke up because it happened on such a large scale. If we would have woken up with the first family and realized who we're dealing with, we wouldn't have got to that. It's a shame that we did not wake up. It's like I met a girl. This is an amazing thing. I met a girl on a plane. She was from Alabama. She'd never met a Jew before. We had this long conversation. I'll cut a long story short. I tell her the whole of Jewish history, the way I see things. That week, 70 or 72 missiles landed in the south. And I said, here, this week was a bad week. The Arab-Israel conflict, 70 missiles. She said, 70 missiles? She couldn't understand one missile landing in the 10th square of Alabama. If we would have acted like wilde chayas, like animals, like what you're meant to do when there's a single missile, we wouldn't have got to the stage where we are today. If we'd been in charge of the stopping the weapons going there, we just didn't do what we were meant to do. And unfortunately, we had to reach the 7th of October. No one wants the 7th of October, of course, but it had to get to that stage for us to, oh my God, now we've reacted.
And it's been a big wake-up call for the left, hasn't it? So what's happening in Israel? Are the left in turmoil as a result of?
The left are in major turmoil. I have many friends, and I even had some friends who were slightly to the left. At the beginning of Oslo, they said, no, we have to give away the Gaza Strip. We have to take the Jews out. We have to give it a go. And some of them woke up when the first missiles started coming in. That was the first wave of left-wingers that moved across. Today, after 7th of October, we're talking about attacking the left-wing bastion of people that were making peace, sharing balloons, taking them to hospitals, having coffee with them. The whole time, they're planning a massacre. They're working out how many families are here, which people are there, these same people. So there's been a very big wake-up call. It doesn't mean to say, that there aren't still people on the left that are so delusional, that they, no matter what, no, we have to keep on going. We have to get rid of Netanyahu. We have to hand away more land. We have to give them a state. There are for sure people like that. But and maybe there'll always be people that are delusional and that don't understand who they are. They've lost where they're coming from. They've lost where they're going. And therefore, someone who doesn't have Jewish roots, someone that doesn't know where they're going, will say things that are just not reality. We've got a major, our biggest problem, I personally think, is the Israeli Arabs. It's something which is being kept very, very quiet today. No one wants to talk about it. But let's not forget that 2 years ago, whenever it was, the Israeli Arabs rioted in all our cities and burnt synagogues, looted, smashed, destroyed friendships with their Jewish neighbors. We have a ticking time bomb everywhere. And unless we change our thinking in relation to our attitude to the Israeli Arabs, to the education system, they should be having 3 years of national service and not just letting them off. There has to be a different feeling. If you want to live in a Jewish state for Jewish people with Jewish values, then you have to go all the way.
Daniel, that'd be a very hard argument to make when you mentioned they should be doing national service. When one of the biggest arguments is the Haredi are not doing national service, they'll say if the Jews don't, yeah,
it's actually the opposite. I believe that the Haredim have got an argument against the left wing. All they have to say is, "What are you worrying about us for? We're citizens, but you're not." And what about the citizens, the Israeli Arabs? They're also citizens. Why don't they have to have national service? First of all, I believe that the Haredi world, should also move across, and I believe it's happening that way. I don't believe it has to come from what's the word? Not litigation. It shouldn't happen from laws. Social changes happen slowly in time, and it is happening in time. I don't think you can legislate that sort of thing. You don't think you can legislate something like that, but I think it has to happen. It's a necessary, it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment, and they should understand it themselves. There are some Haredi rabbis that are already moving in that direction, saying, we've been wrong, and this is a milchemet mitzvah. It's a compulsory mitzvah, and learning Torah is important. It's vital. We survive only because of it, but there's a time also to fight and learn. So there are plenty of opportunities.
And are there communal organizations of Israeli Arabs, and have they said anything publicly? Do Israeli Jews know what the Arabs are thinking?
I don't know how much we know what they're really thinking deep down inside. It's been very quiet. What happened 2 years ago, and I apologize, I forgot when etc. it was. It's not like that. They haven't reared their head of hatred or started to loot or riot. Is that because they're scared? Is it because they saw the repercussions, what happened last time? Is there more police in these mixed cities? I don't know. But it is an issue. We can't ignore the fact that here in Israel, we are trying to coalesce two phenomenal concepts, one which is a Jewish state for Jewish people and a multicultural democratic society. And that's not so easy. Since 48 to this very day, we've been trying to keep the lid on both. Every so often it explodes, like we saw, and they rioted. But the Israeli Arab may not necessarily feel like an equal citizen here. And that we have to be very careful that doesn't explode, because it's a ticking time bomb. I spoke to an Arab who works in the shuk. He's a regular Israeli Arab. I'm close with him. I'm friendly with him. He smiles. He sees me all the time. And after they rioted in Lod and Ramleh 2 years ago, I went to him and said, listen, what do you teach your kids? Do you teach them about this country that you're living in? You pay taxes. You're here. You're a citizen. He says, and he said it to me very nicely with even a half smile. He says, no, I teach my kids about the Nakba. That one day we are going to go back. But he doesn't say it with venom in his eyes or hatred. But it was like, you don't understand, Daniel? It's obvious. I'm teaching the next generation that we are going to go back. So we have a really serious problem, not just in our borders, but even within. So we have to be very careful how we're treading, what we're doing. And it's all about education. If you let education go, David Bedin has been screaming for years about not just the education, not just in UNRWA, which he was right for many years, but also the education in some of the local Arab schools. If you want to be a good citizen, then you have to understand where you're living and accept the state that you're in. It may take another generation. The next young generation in Gaza is a nightmare.
We have a similar problem in Australia with our Arab Muslim population, some of the extremists, just like what's happening in Europe and London and France. It's a worldwide problem where the influence is not good.
You saw the education in the Gaza Strip. I mean, there was a video put out, I'm not sure who put it out, about between 10 and 12-year-olds. They were talking, I'm looking forward to the day that I can run over a Jew. Looking forward to the day that I can stab a Jew. Yahoo, kill. But no, it's the next generation. These are 10 and 12-year-olds.
Well, they've got no role model. That's the problem. The only role model for a Palestinian Arab in somewhere like Gaza is that of a terrorist. Yeah. The schools, the parks, the hospitals, the institutions are all named after terrorists.
UNRWA.
Role model that they have.
That's what they said. What was the survey recently? I don't remember the exact figure, because some of them spoke about 78%, even went up to late 80% of Arabs within Israel, local Israeli Arabs, and in Judea and Samaria. So Judea and Samaria was the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, not the Israeli Arabs. Yeah. Judea and Samaria are showing support and pride just like the Gazan Arabs. Makes you wonder about so-called innocent civilians. They're the ones that, the murderers were calling them, look, I've killed this one, I've killed that one. They're the ones demonstrating. They're the ones that were happy and handing out lollies when the Twin Towers went down. And they're feeling pride from the 7th of October. Just this is what we're faced with. When you have an enemy like Amalek, you don't sit at a table. You don't sit Michael and Al at a table and let's talk over coffee and water. You have an enemy, you destroy an enemy. You have a fire, you put out the fire in a serious way. You don't leave half a fire going.
So we'll finish off in a moment, but just tell us, what's the mood in Israel about the US administration, especially in light of the last few days, where we saw a terrible act of betrayal by the Biden administration. What do Israelis think about the relationship with America?
Listen, if you were to ask today what you think about the American administration, should we cut off ties? The majority of people would even say yes. Let's go get our own weapons. I mean, the fact that they give us weapons, they think they have the chutzpah, the arrogance, the audacity to start dictating terms like that senator, whatever he was, someone from the Democratic Party, talking the way he did about Netanyahu, about elections, about voting the way they are.
The Jewish senator.
What happened to the common core values? What happened to fighting the enemy? What happened to understanding who we are? We're standing at a forefront today for the whole world. Muslim fundamentalism is taking over the world. It's hitting America. It's already hit Europe. There are countries that are already gone. We're standing at the forefront against all of this. And for the State Department to still go on, talk about the two-state delusion, to talk about Israel the way they are, about a ceasefire, it's just a stab in the back, a disgrace. We need to find our own weapon sources as quickly as possible. And I hope Netanyahu has the courage, he definitely has the backing of the Jewish people to say enough is enough. And the truth is, with all due respects to Biden, who was a beautiful friend and he spoke nicely on that first day, I don't know why they're propping him up. I mean, he's not 100%. It's a shame for him to have such a situation. The State Department, whoever is behind it, it's a disgrace what's going on there. But we are our own Star of David. Jewish lives matter. The Star of David matters. We have our own flag, our own star, and may that continue for many years to come.
Amen. Well, Daniel,
Baruch Hashem.
Very much. It's great to catch up with you again. Just before we go, tell people how they can look you up online, and if they want to donate, I'm sure they'll be more than
AteretCohanim.org is the easiest way.
Just spell that for
AteretCohanim.org, AteretCohanim.org. If someone wants to be involved to help, there are a range of projects, from security projects, family projects, yeshiva projects, Beit Knesset, restoring an old synagogue that's called actually the Lamb Heritage and the Beit Knesset, the center in the Shiloach. There's a lot of things to do for, like I said, for children's, for security, for families. For those that want to be involved in acquisitions, be in direct contact with me. Of course, that's a slightly different story. There's a lot to be done. If you want to contact me personally, it's just very simple. DL, as in Daniel Luria, DLJerusalem@gmail.com.
Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel. Great to see you again.
Nice to be here.
And Michael, we'll be back with more of these little interviews in due course. So thanks for joining us, and we'll wish everybody goodbye for now.
Shalom.
Bye.